take a look at some of the top stories. Israel struck dozens of targets in Iran, including a nuclear research site, prompting Tehran to halt nuclear talks until bombing ceases, while the UK, France, Germany, and the EU diplomats push for diplomacy, and Trump mulls a US strike decision within 2 weeks, according to reports. One person is killed and 14 injured as Russian drones strike Odessa overnight, damaging high-rises and railway links, officials say. China has slammed the EU for double standards after being banned from medical device contracts over market access restrictions, and condemned Britain for spending HMS Spy through the Taiwan Strait, according to Foreign Ministry spokesman Go Jiakun and PLA Navy. Rights abuses in North Korea continue a decade after UN probe, says UN's James Heenan. Meanwhile, UNICEF warns Gaza faces a man-made drought, with only 40% of water facilities still functional. Their collapsing water systems may lead to children dying of thirst. HPCL to invest $231 million to build 24 compressed biogas plants across India in the next 2 to 3 years as part of India's Net Zero 2070 goal. According to reports, this initiative comes amid a national push to increase compressed biogas blending to 5% by 2029. Japan faces record pressure for corporate reform as activist shareholders submit proposals to 52 companies in June, the highest ever, urging better capital use and returns, according to Mitsubishi UFJ data, while SoftBank's Masayoshi Son plans a $1 trillion AI hub in Arizona, reports Bloomberg. At least 12 people were killed in a mine collapse in eastern Congo, a region that supplies 1/6 of the world's coltan, while beer maker Heineken confirmed it lost control of its facilities in this conflict, hit cities like Goma and Bukavu in Congo due to escalating clashes with M23 rebels, according to media reports. U.S. singer Chris Brown pleads not guilty to assaulting music producer Abraham Diao with a tequila bottle in 2023 London nightclub attack. According to reports, Brown, 36, was granted bail ahead of his October 2026 trial after posting a $6.7 million security. As tensions between Israel and Iran continue to rise, a senior Iranian official says Tehran is open to limiting uranium enrichment but rejects any call for zero enrichment, calling it unacceptable amid Israeli strikes. The official also ruled out talks with the U.S., urging European powers to step up diplomatic efforts. Iran is urging these European nations to come forward with a clear initiative to break the nuclear stalemate. As diplomatic efforts continue, French President Emmanuel Macron says European powers are pushing for a political solution to the conflict. Macron also says France, Germany, and the UK are putting forward a comprehensive offer to relaunch negotiations. This comes as US President Donald Trump reportedly considered a possible military response, with the war now entering its second week. Let's listen in to what Emmanuel Macron has said.
Et pourquoi, depuis plusieurs jours, la France a une voix claire, simple. 1. Rien ne justifie les frappes sur les infrastructures énergétiques et les populations civiles. Rien. Et 2. Il faut absolument prioriser le retour à la négociation de fond qui inclut le nucléaire pour aller vers le zéro enrichissement, le balistique pour limiter les activités et les capacités iraniennes, et le financement de tous les groupes terroristes de déstabilisation de la région qu'elle a procédé l'Iran depuis plusieurs années. C'est d'ailleurs...
On the military front, Israel has deployed its Barak air defense system for the first time. The system successfully intercepted an unmanned aerial vehicle as regional alert levels remain high. Meanwhile, the Israeli military has confirmed it is targeting military infrastructure inside western and central Iran. In Iraq, thousands of supporters of powerful cleric Muqtada Sadr took to the streets, rallying against Israel's war with Iran. No to Israel, no to America, chanted protesters in Baghdad's southern city. Now we have guests joining us for this discussion. Yossi Cooper-Vesser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Yossi, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. What was the strategic objective behind Israel striking Iran's nuclear research site and military site? Do you believe the mission achieved its goal, or is it still continuing?
Well, the objective was to make sure that Iran doesn't have the capability to produce nuclear weapons and doesn't have the capability to produce missiles that can hit Israel with heavy payloads. That was the mission, and we are moving towards having this mission completed. We have been attacking sites that belong to the nuclear program of Iran for a week now. We hit a lot of them and we caused a lot of damage. We hit a lot of the missiles, but there's an alert now as we speak that the new barrage of missiles is on its way towards us from Iran. And we have, so that we know that even though we accomplished a lot, we haven't yet accomplished the entire mission, and we shall have to continue hitting those targets in the coming few days. And hopefully the Americans are going to make their share and take care of the Fordow underground facility of enrichment that the Iranians have, that the Americans have a better way to deal with than us, Israel.
And according to media sources, Yossi, Israel says it's targeting military infrastructure deep inside of Iran. How does Mossad gather intelligence or for such strikes in deep and hostile territory?
Not only Mossad, we have the military intelligence also doing that collection activity. We do it in various ways. We have the ability to cover Iran from the air with our satellites. We know what's going on and what's moving there. We have people working for us. We have ability to listen to all kinds of things, and we collect information and gather it and do whatever is necessary in order to know what's the infrastructure that we have to deal with and how it's moving, how it's functioning, and in due course to be able to take action against it.
And that brings us to another key development from what we saw today. France, Germany, and the UK are pushing a new negotiation offer. Is Israel coordinating with the European powers, or are there divergences in strategic priorities?
Well, it's not clear yet. I think that basically they share our goal of not allowing Iran to have the capability to produce nuclear weapons. They are not that happy that we take military steps in order to make this happen, but that's the Europeans. What can we do? At the same time, they do understand that we have a right to defend ourselves, and that the Iranian purpose in having a nuclear weapon is to gain the capability to use it against Israel. So we cannot be complacent about the efforts of the Iranians to accomplish the goal of having nuclear weapons. The Europeans can do two things. First of all, they can mediate between the Iranians and the Americans. And secondly, they can threaten the Iranians with the possibility of snapping back the sanctions that were in place before the signature of the JCPOA. We have to understand that the JCPOA was totally misbased, because it was based on the idea that there is a possibility to prove that Iran doesn't have a military program. And this was proven wrong, because the Iranians do have a military program, and a military nuclear program. And because of that, and now that the International Atomic Energy Agency have declared that the Iranians had that military program, this entire agreement of the JCPOA is proven to be based on nothing but lies. And that is something that the Europeans should take into account, and they can threaten the Iranians with the snapping back of the sanctions, which would mean that the situation in Iran would be much more difficult for the regime economically wise. And that's something that the Europeans can do in order to put more pressure on the Iranians to show readiness to enter the negotiations with the Americans and to accept what the Americans are asking, which is the complete withdrawal from all the nuclear project in so diplomatic ways without using force. We are totally in favor of, we don't like using force. If there's a way to solve the problem through diplomatic means, it's even better.
And building on that, Iran is saying that it's willing to limit uranium enrichment but not eliminate it. What do you think about this answer, or what we know from Iran for now? And is this a tactic of them, or will there be more pressure from Israeli operation?
Well, we insist on that they would stop enriching uranium, and this is also the American position. They have to stop enriching uranium. As long as they have the capability to produce, to enrich uranium, everybody knows. Oh, sorry, there's an alert here. Sorry, I have to leave.
Thank you very much, Yossi Cooper-Wasser, for joining us today and sharing that insight as Israeli intelligence and security expert. Now we move on to our next story. Gaza's Civil Defense Agency has said Israeli fire killed at least 72 people in the Palestinian territory. The death toll includes 21 people who had gathered to receive aid in central and southern Gaza. At least 300 Palestinians have been killed in recent weeks while trying to reach aid distribution points in Gaza, which is suffering from famine-like conditions. As per the Gaza Health Ministry, in early March, Israel imposed an aid blockade on Gaza amid a deadlock in truce negotiations, only partially easing restrictions. In late May, after Israel loosened its blockade, the privately run Gaza Humanitarian Foundation began distributing aid, but its operations have been marred by chaotic scenes. Now we have guests joining us for this discussion, Laura Stanchait. She's a Middle East expert joining us live from Germany. Thank you for joining us today, Laura, and welcome to NewsX World. What is the European Union's assessment of the current humanitarian conditions in Gaza, especially with reports of famine-like situation and 300 deaths near aid sites recently?
Well, thank you very much. I think the European Union in the past months has been pushing very much towards the direction that more aid has to reach Gaza and that agreements have to be reached. However, realistically, that always poses a more difficult reality with the most recent deaths that have occurred. I think the IDF has not released an official statement yet, but generally speaking, I would say the European Union, especially in the past weeks, has been really pushing towards more diplomacy in that matter, and also more aid to reach Gaza, which did happen in the past weeks, which I guess is a very positive development, and we will have to see where this is going to head.
And building on that, Laura, is there a case for deploying neutral third-party monitors for humanitarian corridors backed by international guarantees so that we can avoid further aid-related deaths?
To support further aid or to avoid further aid?
To support further aid, but to avoid further deaths near aid sites.
Well, I think right now there is no big initiative of third parties joining. However, right now seeing the Iran conflict arising and more diplomacy being pushed, that might be a solution. That might be a solution in the future. However, I believe that Israel is very much able to handle this on their own because the situation on site is very, very difficult on both sides. So we kind of question whether a European side in this could help.
And given that many deaths occurred at aid distribution points, do you believe Israel is doing enough to distinguish between military and civilian targets?
Well, I believe very much so that Israel is doing their best to prevent civilian casualties. However, at these 8 points, you have a lot of problems arising, and you have, of course, always both sides releasing their statements on what happened there. I think Gaza is just a very tumultuous area right now in general. But yeah, I believe so that Israel has been doing their best to prevent civilian casualties, especially with the current aid situation, which has been increasing. And I think it's, generally speaking, a positive development that we have been seeing there.
And Laura, according to you, should countries like France, Germany, and take a firmer stance towards Israel?
I think Germany especially, and also France, have been taking a very firm stand when it comes to Gaza, and these firm stands have been increasing in the past weeks. I think where we've been seeing a switch right now is with everything that has been happening in Iran, and then with that we have been seeing a general switch in communication of the West towards Israel and towards the overall global conflict. So I think, if anything or anyhow, the stances of the West have been kind of like decreasing in the sense of talking about firm stance. This would be related to Iran. I see that especially Germany has been very, very firm in the past weeks that Israel has to follow like humanitarian ideals when it comes to the contribution of aid, and also when it comes to the civilian casualties in Gaza. So I think a more firm stand is not needed as of right now. We just see priorities shift, with also, I believe, the West kind of waking up to what this conflict actually is about.
And Laura, since you are in Germany, do you see any pro-Hamas, Israel rallies or pro-Palestine rallies, and are European governments now voicing more for Gaza because they are facing domestic pressure to reconsider their arms sales or diplomatic cooperation with Israel in light of these developments?
So what we've seen is pro-Israeli rallies kind of decreasing in the past weeks, as I've been part of those a lot in the past months, and also in the past years. We have immense security issues with pro-Israeli rallies, which is a huge issue. If you ask me, we do have a lot of pro-Palestinian rallies, especially when you look at big cities like Berlin. However, I do not believe that poses a domestic pressure, especially on the German government, to act in a more pro-Palestinian sense. I believe quite on the contrary. These rallies tend to be very extremist, very pro-Hamas, very pro-Islamistic, and it kind of creates an opposite effect on Western governments, especially the German government, because these rallies, they tend to have a very negative reputation. So I do not believe that as of right now these rallies serve Gaza in any way.
That raises this natural question that how is this humanitarian crisis affecting Europe's credibility in the region, especially when compared to its swift support for Ukraine during wartime?
Excuse me, the internet was back. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. So I wanted to ask, how is this humanitarian crisis and the reaction of German government and different reaction within the population of Germany? As you said, there's more pro-Palestine rallies and also pro-Israel rallies. How is this affecting the credibility in the region, especially when compared to its swift support for Ukraine during wartime?
I think the German government especially has been struggling with their credibility in general over the past months. So we just had a rather tumultuous change within our government for German history, let's say. So they struggle with credibility in general as of right now. And then in the past months, you've seen that a lot of people do really call for humanitarianism in Germany. And then again, you have to lead it back a bit to the Iran conflict. I feel like many people in Germany who have been kind of calling for Gaza in the past weeks and have been very vocal about Israel, they are kind of taking a few steps back because they're seeing this conflict on a more broader scale, on a more global scale, on a more international scale. And so I feel like we've been having a huge drift within society when it comes to being let's say, anti-Israel in Germany. However, I see this changing a bit, and you also see that in the language of the German government right now, with our chancellor saying that Israel, as of right now, is doing the dirty work for the rest of the world. So I believe that in the next few weeks, again, we're going to see a shift within the German society when it comes to that. But that is mostly linked to Iran, not so much on the conflict in Gaza as itself, but it will have huge effects on the discussion.
And lastly, what is next with the truce negotiation deadlocked and no ceasefire in sight? What do you think is next for this conflict to prevent further humanitarian collapse?
Well, that's a very difficult question because I feel like that the current developments in Iran also play a big part in that. I think the weaker Iran gets, the more space there is for Israel again to negotiate with Gaza. So it kind of depends on how the Middle East also will develop within the next weeks and months, and I think there's a lot of room for development there. However, we should call for the negotiations there to continue. We should not only focus on the Iran conflict right now. It is very important that deals are reached, and then especially that we keep on negotiating for the hostages. I think that should be also the number one priority of the Israeli government right now, which is happening. So yeah, it will develop further, and Israel will continue very close talks to Gaza, trying to get the hostages back. So not that much of a change, but on an international scale, things might change a little. We'll see. Also, the international community might back Israel a bit more in the upcoming weeks, so that will help.
Thank you very much, Laura Stanshade, for joining us and bringing your expertise as a Middle East expert to our conversation. Now we have a breaking news. Israel's ambassador to UN in Geneva has said that they haven't yet fulfilled the goals, so they are continuing the military operation in Iran. Meanwhile, a short while ago, the IDF identified missiles launched from Iran towards the territory of the State of Israel. Upon receiving an alert, the public is instructed to enter a protected space and remain there until further notice. Now we move on to next story. Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra is set to visit an army commander she called an opponent in a leaked phone call as she battles to defuse a crisis threatening to topple her government. This comes after the Prime Minister was forced to make a public apology as anger flared over the call with former Cambodian leader Hun Sen that appeared online. In this leaked call, Paetongtarn was heard discussing an ongoing border dispute with Hun Sen. During their discussion, Paetongtarn referred to the Thai army commander in the country's northeast as her opponent, a remark that sparked fierce criticism in social media. The Thai Foreign Ministry summoned the Cambodian ambassador on Thursday to deliver a letter complaining about the leaking of the call. After the leak, the Prime Minister's main coalition partner quit, and she faced calls for resignation or hold an election, throwing the kingdom into a fresh round of political instability as it seeks to boost its spluttering economy and avoid U.S. President Donald Trump's swinging trade tariffs. Here's what the Thai PM has said.
ภัยพี่น้องประชาชนนะคะคนไทยทุกๆคนที่มีในเรื่องของกรณีที่มีคลิปเสียงหลุดออกมาระหว่างที่ดิฉันคุยกับผู้นำทางกัมพูชานะคะก็จริงๆเป็นเรื่องประเทศไทยค่ะเพื่อมายื่นหนังสือประท้วงนะคะเพื่อแสดงความผิดหวังอย่างยิ่งต่อการกระทำของผู้นำกัมพูชาค่ะอันนี้จริงๆทั่วโลกไม่มีใครทำแบบนี้นะคะที่ผู้นำคุยกันไม่ว่าจะเป็นประเทศใหญ่ๆที่มีการตกลงกันหรือมีการพูดคุยเจรจาใดๆเนี่ยรัฐบาลไทยนะคะก็กับกองทัพนะคะก็ขอแสดงความรับผิดชอบในเรื่องของการปกป้องอธิปไตยนะคะที่เรากำลังดูแลร่วมกันนะคะแล้วก็ขอยืนยันอีกครั้งว่าทางรัฐบาลกับกองทัพเองเป็นหนึ่งเดียวกันก็อยากให้พี่น้องประชาชนเป็นหนึ่งเดียวกับเราด้วยนะคะภัย
Now we have guests joining us for this discussion. Ross Feingold, he's a political analyst joining us live from Taipei. Thank you, Ross, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. How damaging is the leaked call for Prime Minister Shinawatра's credibility, particularly within Thailand's powerful military establishment, according to you?
It's done extraordinary damage to her standing with a good part of the public that doesn't support her, and certainly with the military establishment. We all know the military's history of coups and overthrowing democratically elected governments. They've done it twice in the last 25 years, in 2006 and 2014. The military does not like her party. They don't like her father or her aunt, and they probably don't like her very much. And this is certainly going to worsen the relationship she has with the military. So it's going to be very interesting what happens with this meeting and with the general who she basically criticized and badmouthed, and what's going to happen going forward between the civilian government and the military's relationship.
And what's your risk forecast for Thailand over the next 6 months? Are we likely to see a stabilizing reset or further fragmentation and unrest?
Well, the easiest answer is to assume that there's going to be unrest, and there's the red side of Thai politics, which supports the Shinawatra family, and there's the yellow side, which is associated with the military and with the monarchy and with the middle class and upper classes in Bangkok. And they've had dueling protests break out numerous times over the past 25 years, and it's certainly very possible that those kinds of protests can break out again.
And now from a Taiwan perspective or your perspective, what lessons does this crisis offer about managing civil-military relations and foreign policy leaks in volatile political environments?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the elected government's relationship with the military differs significantly across different countries here in East Asia. But again, one country where the military has repeatedly played an outsized role in politics, including by launching numerous military coups, is Thailand. So if there was one institution she shouldn't offend, it's the monarchy. And if there's a second institution she shouldn't offend, it's the military. And she's gone and offended the military. And this is a really dangerous situation for her to be in, unless she can find a way to patch up that relationship, which we'll have to wait and see whether she's able to do that.
And is there a risk that this incident could escalate diplomatic tensions between Cambodia and Thailand further?
Yeah, that's also a very good question. It seemed that after the tension shot up a few weeks ago, that both sides had military-to-military discussion, and both sides had agreed to a pullback. Then Cambodia said they were going to pursue this in the International Court of Justice, which Thailand doesn't recognize. And then they had the call between Paetongtarn and Hun Sen, which was supposed to be an ice-breaking movement because her family does have a good relationship with Hun Sen, but now it's blown up because of the leak and how she described the general. So if we wanted to be conservative, we'd have to assume that tensions are going to continue to be high between Thailand and Cambodia, and certainly tourists should probably stay away from the border regions.
Thank you very much, Ross Feingold, for joining us and sharing your insight as a political risk analyst. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.